Hey, how's it going everyone? Jinsula here. Welcome to today's Pokemon GO video. And today I want to talk about a topic that I don't think often gets discussed when it comes to Pokemon GO. Something that I've learned over the years is that when it comes to raid battles, which I consider as the most important form of gameplay in Pokemon GO, a lot of players tend to go about it very casually, or they are just new players who just simply do not know the intricacies of Pokemon GO. And for those players, I wanted to make this video because I think when it comes to raids, if you bring the right Pokemon, regardless of what your collection has, you're going to contribute quite a lot, and you'll be able to take down those raid bosses. More often than not, you're not going to have enough trainers when it comes to raids, and taking down that raid boss is going to feel quite difficult. But if you're bringing the right Pokemon and you're optimizing your input, yeah, you will be able to take down that raid boss, and it's really going to come down to what Pokemon you're using. Right, so with that said, the first tip that I wanted to talk about when it comes to optimizing your raid input is in regards to the Pokemon in your collection. Yes, for players who have been playing the game for a very long time will likely have a whole bunch of different legendaries and mythicals and a whole bunch of top meta picks. But in general, I think the average player is just going to have regular Pokemon that they collect on a day-to-day basis. And that's okay. You just want to make sure you're maxing out the right Pokemon. There are certain Pokemon that, believe it or not, are going to outperform even legendaries when it comes to raids. You just need to know what the right ones are. I've made videos in the past talking about what the top Pokemon are for each type, but I would say that you should do your own research based on your own collection. You might be sitting on some top Pokemon and you may not even realize it. Like for example, did you know that Swampert, Machamp, and Alakazam are often considered some of the best raiding Pokemon in the game? Like if you have a bunch of these, then yeah, you should power them up. And I really do think the investment is definitely going to be worth it. Until you get yourself a huge collection of maxed out legendaries, which could take you several years, I would just invest in certain Pokemon that you will use quite frequently, and they're going to have the highest damage output when it comes to raids. Speaking of which, you will want to power up the right Pokemon within each species. That is my second tip because I often find that certain players just simply do not power up the right Pokemon even if they have the right species. Like for example, if you have a Swampert with Muddy Water, but you have another Swampert with Hydro Cannon, then the one with Hydro Cannon is obviously the one you will want to max out. And then when it comes to IVs, the appraisal of the Pokemon, that is another key factor when it comes to how effective a Pokemon is going to be. Like let's say you have a Machamp that has 13, 15, and 15 IVs. Yes, that's a 96% IV Machamp, and it's looking to be pretty good. But you have another one that's 15, 13, and 10. Not a really good appraisal, but it does have 15 attack. Well, believe it or not, that second one with 15 attack is actually going to prove to be a lot more useful in most raid battles, and that is the one you should actually max out. In the ideal scenario, you will have a 100% of every single one of your raid Pokemon, but that's just simply not going to be the case for a majority of players. Even myself, I do not have a lot of 100% when it comes to raid Pokemon. So work with what you have. If you have a whole bunch of Pokemon that you feel could be useful in raids, look it up to see if it is actually viable, and then max it out if it is. Now speaking of maxing out, here is something that a lot of players tend to not realize. There is something called breakpoints, which is the point of which a Pokemon is going to deal the most damage, even though it is not fully maxed out. So why is that important? Well, you're going to be saving a lot of Stardust and candies when it comes to certain Pokemon. You don't need to fully max it out, you just need to hit that breakpoint where you're going to deal the optimum amount of damage. There are some Pokemon that deal the same or almost the same amount of damage that they would at level 40 at around level 35. So you save yourself 5 levels worth of powering up. And that's also important because some of these Pokemon might be temporary additions to your raid parties. You may eventually get yourself a super powerful legendary to replace that Pokemon, and you will want to make sure you have the Stardust to max out that Pokemon instead. So make sure you save your Stardust here and there. Don't power up every single Pokemon that you think is going to be really good, just power up the ones that you will be using and make sure you're only hitting those breakpoints. Now, the next tip that I'm going to be talking about is not necessarily going to be easy for everyone, but you should really try to find yourself a community. Pokemon GO is one of those games that's best enjoyed with other people. If you're not finding yourself a community of players, then chances are you're not going to be able to take down a lot of raids. Yeah, the ideal scenario is that you're gonna have a bunch of high-level trainers carrying you through every single raid. If you're a low-level player with not a lot of legendaries, you will be okay if the raid lobby is completely full with a bunch of level 40s and 50s. That's just naturally how the game is. They don't scale the difficulty depending on the number of trainers in the lobby. You just have to jump into a lobby that's full of trainers, and you don't even need to bring the most optimum Pokemon. You'll still be able to take it down. But unfortunately, a vast majority of players do not live in high population areas. And for the select few that do, they are not familiar with the players that are around them. So you need to utilize every tool to your advantage to find other trainers. Probably the best way to find a community of players, in my opinion, is to fully utilize Wednesday raid hours. If you go to a local area with a lot of gyms and you find that some of those gyms are filling up with people on Wednesdays, then go to those gyms and meet those people. See if they have a Discord server for you to join. Another thing is to use Niantic Campfire. This is an app that Niantic developed themselves, and it's a great way to connect with trainers within your local area. They actually have a lot of tools for you to find local groups, like you will actually see them on the map, and then you could join up with them and communicate with them on when they do raids. That's another great way to find groups for raid battles, and you could get yourself carried through a lot of the toughest ones. And let's say you live in a rural area where there's not even that many gyms or Pokemon Go players, then look for Discord servers where they have worldwide trainers that are sending out remote raid invites. That's still a way for you to raid, even though it is more expensive, and it's probably the best band-aid fix that we're going to get when it comes to rural gameplay, which is quite unfortunate. And if they don't have a Discord server, then maybe you could start one for the group, or you could just ask them when they actually go out and raid. You'd be surprised that some of them probably have raid groups that they raid with frequently, and you could jump in. Yeah, there's a lot of great ways for you to find communities, but I really think that's one of the most important things for you to elevate your Pokemon Go raiding gameplay. So yeah, the final thing that I'm going to mention when it comes to raiding optimally, I really do think the best thing to do is to just continuously play Pokemon Go. The more candy and the more Stardust that you collect every single day, the more powerful your raid Pokemon are going to be. And then as you power up those Pokemon, the better damage that they're going to do in raid battles, and the more raids you're going to be able to complete. But it's really going to come down to how active you are. And then another key thing related to that is that you will want to pay attention to what event wild spawns are spawning during any in-game event, because chances are there is a Pokemon that's going to be really good for raid battles, and they're going to be abundant, and you will want to catch them and collect as much candy for them as you possibly can. Like more recently, we had an event that featured Beldum, and it was a great opportunity for you to get a whole bunch of Beldum. That Pokemon evolves into Metagross, which, if you have the Community Day moves for it with Elite Charge TMs, that's going to be your absolute best Steel-type Pokemon that you can use, which means it's going to be a top-tier raid attacker for Fairy-type and Dragon-type raid bosses. So that's something you should keep in mind. There's often going to be cases where some of the best raid Pokemon are going to be featured as event wild spawns, and you do not want to miss out on them. And then do not neglect Team Go Rocket battles, because Shadow Pokemon are some of the most powerful Pokemon in the game when it comes to raids, and you will want to make sure you have a nice collection of Shadow Pokemon that you could use. In fact, a lot of Shadow Pokemon are actually future-proof. They're going to be Pokemon that will be really difficult to replace. So yeah, if you're a newer player or a low-level player or someone who plays very casually, I really hope this video helped you out, because when it comes to raid battles, like I said at the top of this video, it is some of the most important content in the game. It's basically your way of getting legendary Pokemon and mythical Pokemon and some of the most powerful Pokemon in the game. So make sure you're doing your raid battles the best way you can by following the tips that I outlined in this video. But in any case, yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts regarding everything that I talked about down below. Is there a particular tip that you have been using as a low-level player that you would like to share with the rest of the community? Definitely do that down below in the comments, and let's have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to this point in the video. If you ended up enjoying this video and found it to be insightful, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here. And also don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to every single patron on my Patreon. You all make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Count Jinsula channel, the best way you could do so is by going to my Patreon and becoming a paid Patreon member. For every single one of them, they get a permanent spot on my in-game Pokemon Go friends list. So if you want to play Pokemon Go with me, like with remote raids or the friendship system, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. Also, if you want to support my channel in a very different way that doesn't involve spending money, you could always do so by following me on social media. My handle is @CountJinsula, and I'm on the platforms that you see on screen. And yeah, with that spiel out of the way, I'm Count Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.